What's up, traders? Anthony Crudele here, and welcome to this week's episode of Develop Your Edge. In today's show, I'll be speaking with Merritt Black. If you follow the podcast or watch this show, you're familiar with Merritt. And today we're going to dive into mindset and mental edge. So let's rock and roll, everybody, and get Merritt on the line. What's going on, Merritt?
How is it going, my man?
Good, buddy. No beard, no mustache. I'm disappointed.
You know, sometimes you just got to please the wife.
Everyone knows the saying, but thank you so much for joining me again, my friend. And today we're going to talk a lot about mental edge because actually last time you and I were talking on the show, we talked about a lot of your edge. We got really technical, and we said, you know what, we didn't get a chance to talk about mental edge, so we're going to talk about that today. But before that, you and I, we talk all the time, and what's interesting about our conversations as of late, I would say the last several months here, is that we're trading different markets now. And you and I were both one market guys pretty much. Most everybody knows I was an S&P guy, and most everybody knows that you were a crude oil guy. And I know that for me, I've always said, not always, but I was like, I'm not going to be trading NASDAQ, and I traded Bitcoin for a little bit, and then I got away from that, and and now the markets I'm trading the most are NASDAQ, and I'm starting to get a little bit more into Bitcoin. Two words I never thought I would ever say. Those are my markets.
I always look down on NASDAQ. I was like, oh, what is that, like a $5 tick value? Who trades that? It moves.
Oh, boy, does it move. I know. And I've actually been using a lot of the micros for some of my positions in NASDAQ, depending on how volatile it is. But I use, both products, just like with Bitcoin, using spot or futures. But I think it's really interesting that you and I have shifted like this. Why have you shifted it into trading different products now?
Like you said, my focus used to be on crude, and then, kind of last year before, I started changing a bit to where I'm looking at multiple markets and trying to find best opportunities, but always had like that little place in my heart for crude or whatnot. Well, crude is dead to me now. I can tell you that. It's the order flow has entirely changed in that market. So quite frankly, I feel like a lot of my technical edge has been degraded in crude oil. And so, I'm not going to sit there and bang my head against the wall. I'm going to go and find opportunities where they are. So, it's kind of a bittersweet thing, and maybe it'll come back, but the market has technically changed the way the order flow works. Its ranges are drying up, other than when a big catalyst hits, and then it'll move $3 without, with almost untradeable. So for me, it's something I monitor on a daily basis. I keep track of, but I'm trading much, much, much less. And I have been trading more NASDAQ and whatnot as well.
So mostly just NASDAQ or any other markets?
NASDAQ, gold, just monitoring crude, even a little bit of the ultra bond. In fact, some folks in my community,
I like that market.
Yeah, dude. Some folks in my community have been like, this is a great market. You should look at it. You should look at it. And so I just kind of started to observe it, kind of like we talked about before. How do you start trading a new market? I think was one of the things we talked about.
Yeah.
And you just want to observe it for a while, get your feet wet, start small, things like that. So it's a pretty cool market.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, it's NASDAQ. It was a little bit of gold. That's changed a little bit for me. I think it'll come back. I think Bitcoin now, because of the moves, you're seeing more players in there. I think the flow is there. It's following through, like I said, futures or spot. And it's, to me, going back to, we're going to talk about mental edge today, it's really just recognizing that if your edge is being degraded, right? Like you mentioned, it's just not working as well in a specific market. That not that you and I are looking for new trades or new, we're not looking for just, where the action is. We're not just shooting to the action. Like I know a lot of guys, at stock prop firms would do that. They'll trade the hot stock. We're not doing that. We're going to where the response is better to our type of style of trading.
That's right. That's right. It's just, I mean, look, the trading streets are paved with dinosaurs who refuse to adapt and refuse to change. So that's really what we're talking about here. And it's I think part of the life and part of the evolution of a trader over time.
It is. I mean, and to all the traders out there, it's like, you guys have all heard me say, I really feel that one market is a great place, I think, to start. And I spent a majority of my career trading one specific market, and I developed my edge there. And at first moving to other markets, it wasn't easy to see my edge working there. And like with Nasdaq, what I've had to do is I actually changed my book to where I'm not looking at every tick. So I actually make the book because I mean, who could look at everything, right? I mean, I know. So I changed it, and depending on the volatility, and I just do different things and change up maybe a little bit of time frame, but I
Yep.
still am using my same edge. I mean,
Yep.
talk to us
Same.
about that, Merritt, and how you're able to take your edge and actually identify that this other market is working for you now.
To me, context is king. So I look for markets who um, give a good contextual risk reward landscape, right?
Yep.
Asymmetric opportunity, right? And that's something I feel like crude has done a really bad job of second half of this year. And so that's why I've moved away from it. But you've got other markets that, quite frankly, I like to see a market form a couple days of balance, and then I can fade the edges of that balance. I can go with breaks of that balance and things like that. And when I get those type of structural balance areas building and they're tradable, and when there's a condition shift, there's follow through. Those are
Yep.
the markets I'm going to go look to apply. Everything else is tactical from there. So for me, I'm just looking for markets that are setting up nicely contextually and behaving nicely contextually. And then from there, I can then go work on my timing and trade management and all that good stuff.
Thinking back to our prior conversations, two things come to mind. One, that you said it again today, context is king. I think that was actually the name of one of the episodes I did with you. And then your edge is in the edges,
Yep. Yep.
right? Everyone can go back and listen to those or watch those episodes. But one thing that we have not really talked a lot about, and I think this plays into today, adapting to a market that maybe doesn't fit your personality anymore. You're not getting rewarded the way you were with your edge. You having the willingness to put the time in to trade a new market. And to me, that comes with the mental side of things, having mental edge. I think a lot of traders say, well, is mental edge a real thing? What do you think about that?
It's almost like a hot topic for me. I think that mental edge is not one's edge. I think that's bogus, right? Go train with the Dalai Lama for a while and come try and trade markets and see how you do, right? It's not it's one leg of the stool. You have to have what I call a proper mental framework. You have to have a safe mental space to operate within. You have to learn certain truths and accept certain things that are totally out of your control and all those kind of things. And so one's edge is a mathematical, it's an expectancy formula, right? We could all go look it up. It's there's mathematical edge that comes from a methodology with edge of identifying, like I talked about, asymmetric risk reward. And then as long as your win percent makes sense, you can mine an edge out of that market. But if you don't have a good, whatever you want to call it, mental framework, mental edge, it's all for nothing because you can't go execute on it. You can't. Ultimately, what I think the answer is being objective about what's in front of you on the screens rather than what you might think or want or fear, and then being objective kind of with yourself and kind of observing oneself and making good decisions within kind of a process, general framework with your actual edge. So it takes two to tango. It takes both.
It definitely takes both. And I think it's kind of good that we actually did the technical side of things with you first, because I feel that, in my opinion, I had to form a technical edge first before I recognized that I needed to have mental edge. And like you
Same.
said, it's really it's having that awareness. The old me, the old me, like at the beginning of my career, I would just keep fighting the S&P if I wasn't getting rewarded, and I would try to squeeze something out no matter what. The new me is, if it's not there, I don't do anything, or I start looking at the Nasdaq for months and months and months to see if I can have an edge there. Then I move into it, and then that essentially could become my primary market. But it's
Yep.
it's that acceptance period where you're not making money, and that's so difficult. But you have to be able to fight through that.
Yeah.
talk to us about how I want to talk a little bit about your journey. We've talked about you building the technical side. Talk to us about that moment where you recognize that, look, I have edge with my strategy. And then where you started to build on recognizing that you needed this next level of what we'll call mental edge.
It was several epiphanies, but one that really stands out was actually FT71 called me out on it.
Did
He
he?
said, yeah, he
FT.
said, you have a strong technical edge that you have no problem there. He said your problems are entirely between the ears. And it was largely due to my ego, very, very, very strong ego, strong-willed child, all those things. That's me, just check the box.
I relate.
Um, and wanting to, and I think having been good at some things, sports and kind of, different things or whatever, academics, right? All of it kind of came naturally to me. I was able to kind of like be good at some things. I'm not trying to brag on myself. I'm trying to talk about a weakness here. When it comes to trading, no human is really naturally wired to be a great trader.
Mm,
And if you've had some success elsewhere, if you have, or if you're really stubborn and you have a huge ego, you're in for a world of pain and a world of hurt. And that was it for me. He called me out on it. And not only that, but you combine that with a bit of gasoline that I am naturally risk seeking. It's a disaster. I always tell people I'm naturally the world's worst person cut out to be a trader, but I'm too stupid to have ever changed. So yeah, he called me out on that, and then from there, I think it's really a process, or was a process of journaling, pen and paper, reading some different kind of books rather than technical analysis stuff or whatnot.
yeah.
Using everything from experiences I had playing tournament paintball to experiences I had playing tennis, and bringing those to my trading and learning to let off the gas instead of press harder when things aren't working, all those kind of things. But really just beginning, and obviously I'm still working on it, but beginning to get to know oneself better and understand your triggers, you know, understand sequences that tend to lead you to a bad place. Just becoming armed with more and more information. And really, it just takes journaling and objectively observing yourself to start to learn more about yourself.
Yeah, very similar experience with me. You and I have similar tendencies. I think we've talked about that. So what I want to talk about next is really when you look at developing that mental edge, like after you got to that point.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I felt that I needed to actually learn how to be a winning trader. And what
Mm.
I mean by that is I felt that my strategy was good enough to win, but I was still not winning.
For
Uh,
me, learning to win was mostly about losing. It was
yes,
about learning how to lose.
I agree. I've said that many a times, and I think that that is absolutely key. But I think that there's something that followed that for me where, and I want to know what you think about this, is where you actually start. I think that winning is contagious, losing is contagious. And when I was losing, it was just like I was basically just in a certain way to where I would only find a way to win to dig my way out of losses. I couldn't find my way to win to stay on a winning path. And like I had this mindset of, I was only able to pull myself out of holes, not be able to build a winning, basically become like I said, a winning trader. I think that that was a mindset. What do you think about that?
For me, I guess it's a little different. I think there's several different mindsets and different things that come into play here, but for me, it was really about a couple things. One, being able to short circuit what I used to have, which was this: you have an impulse, right? A thought, an emotion, a feeling, a desire to take some trading action. Okay. We're just going to call it an impulse. It could be to get in, it could be to scratch out, whatever. To just going from that impulse to trading action, just directly, just like a
Yeah.
straight line. And so for me, a lot of it came down to you have to now, and this is what the journaling was also really helpful for. You need to begin to insert conscious thought, right? Conscious thought in between, hey, here's a great idea and let's do something about it. In between there, you now need to insert conscious, not acting out of habits, not acting out of emotion, but now think about filtered through a process with edge, which is what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Does this action make a lot of sense for what I'm trying to accomplish as a trader? The identity that I am trying to develop as a trader here and my edge, does it make sense? Just funnel it through a little bit of market generated information, a little bit of process, and just check yourself before you take that action. And so that was huge. I think one thing rather than shifting, like, I guess I don't really relate to shifting to like the mindset of winning. For me, I could put up gains, but it was really about giving it all back, 2 weeks of gains in one session and things like that.
Yes.
And so I had to learn how to lose in order to win. And so for me, that it was really about ego, quite frankly. You think, you know what? I've got a great read on the market. I'm good at trading. I've been making money. I've been doing these things. No, screw you, market. And I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. I'll make it back. Let me try harder. Let me up my size. That doesn't work, right? You have to be able to back off. You have to be able to take, like for example, today I was shorting Nasdaq at like 12,440, and I thought that was a really good spot, and there was a good bit of downside potential. And I tried it a couple times and got a little bit of follow through and whatnot, but it just kept coming back up to that level, coming back up to that level. You have to scratch out. You have to reassess. You have to say, okay, let's let the market run stops through here and then tell us what it's going to do. And so far, it's just been holding above there for the rest of the session. So there's no trade for me. That's just worlds different than what we were talking about before.
And that's growth. And that is being more present, being more in control of what we are doing as traders. And I 100% agree with you. I've said this before. You need to learn how to lose before you could win. There was definitely that epiphany for me where I was like, I was not someone who took loss well. But getting to I want to talk a little bit more about becoming that mindset of winning. And I compare this to sports. I think this is the best way to do that. Let's just say like a Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan lost a bunch of times. He couldn't get past the Pistons, right?
Yep.
And that loss taught him something. But eventually, once he learned how to win, you could see the growth in his maturity to the way that he handled the situations at the end of games. It was like he became the best closer of all time. I really relate to that in the sense of closing out being a finisher. I was always a guy who my risk manager would be like, you're always up money. Or when I was down money, I would walk away and then eventually I'd make it back, the money, my drawdowns, but I was never like, I was just this, it wasn't
Mhm.
like this. I couldn't get to that point until I started finding that at piece of thinking longer term and say, you know what, recognize the situation and where you are right now and fixing it right then and there. So I just wanted to just continue that conversation with you. And I think, what your thoughts are on that.
I think even tying with the Jordan analogy is great and whatnot. And one of my favorite uh, mental edge books is a book about this thin. It's called The Truth About Winning by Tom Veneziano, and it's a tennis book. I played tennis growing up, and he talks about this mental two-step, and he talks about how all kinds of things are going to happen when you're playing tennis, whether it's bad luck, whether it's you doing something stupid. Guess what? Bad luck and doing something stupid happens in trading too, right?
Yeah.
So those things are going to happen. The trick is, and I think this just it was embodied by Jordan. The next shot is more important than the last mistake. Until you can get your mind at a place where you are fully bought in to, hey, I know I've been frustrated here. I know this happened, whatever. There's some negatives. The next shot is more important than the last mistake. Until you're there, you're not ready to be a champion on a short-term basis. Until you can pull yourself there. So whether or not you need to take a break, whether or not you need to do some affirmations, some journaling, all of the above, wherever it is, you have to be able to pivot mentally because the nature of markets are random, right? There's a ton of randomness. Like it doesn't matter how good your mental edge is, it doesn't matter how good your technical edge is. You know, something can happen in the Middle East, something can happen with coronavirus or the vaccine, or, all these things can happen. And it doesn't matter what the technicals were, it doesn't matter what your fundamental picture was. The world is different now, right? So that's the kind of randomness we're dealing with. So to allow those things to frustrate you to where you can't focus on the next shot, you're still looking back, focused on the last mistake. That's what tilt trading is. That's what all that stuff is. So it's just such a tiny little trick, but it's huge.
Absolutely. And Merritt, we're going to end there because that was just awesome. That was just a great explanation. It's always great to speak with you, my friend. Every time you and I
Pleasure's
talk,
mine.
I'm always learning more about you and myself. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, brother. Enjoyed it.
Hang tight, traders. I'll be right back with my final thoughts.
24/7 access to diverse global markets. Right here.
That's why I added stock index futures to my trading strategy. Now when I see ups and downs coming, I'm ready.
Well played.
Why trade with TradeStation? It's innovative, easy to use, and totally freaking sweet. With powerful tools to track and execute your trades and low per trade commissions on stocks, futures, and options. Upgrade your trade at TradeStation.com.
Final thoughts for today, traders. Always great to catch up with Merritt. We've become really close friends over the years. Trading is a journey of oneself, and he and I recognize that. We've had similar paths and similar journeys on becoming a trader. And one of the things that we talked about today that I was really a struggle for me in my career was becoming that losing trader, that losing mentality, and shifting that to a winning trader and having a winning mentality. And I know many of you traders out there, especially new traders, it's hard when you are struggling and you're losing money to find that mental strength, to find that edge about yourself to become a winning trader. And like Merritt and I discussed today, it's about building that foundation first, getting your technical or fundamental strategy in play, and then, like Merritt talked about, journaling, doing things to find out more about yourself and your journey to push you through becoming a winning trader. Now, before I let you guys go, December 7th, NASDAQ California Water Index futures are being launched at CME Group. To learn more about them, go to cmegroup.com. You can click here to subscribe for updates. We have water futures now, folks. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at Anthony Crudele. Don't forget to check out Instagram, Anthony C. Crudele. That's a wrap for today. See you next week.